There it goes. There it goes. Well, I just got a dry run of saying everything I just said to myself because I just started this whole thing and the live didn't actually start. So I'm just going to wait this time to see that anybody shows up. Just, of course, speaking this to anybody that's watching the replay, that I just finished doing like a 3-minute intro to all of this. And the live, I don't know, the live button didn't work. And so then I was like, why is there warnings popping up that Facebook is about to cancel my live? And that's when I realized I wasn't actually live. Hello, thanks for joining in. I see that 2 people have joined so far. And I don't know who you are, so please say hi, send a comment. And I was just saying that the live didn't actually start when I hit the live button, and I was talking, and I was like, why is no one here? And then I realized it never went live. So I'm just going to wait a second to make sure people actually join in before I start saying all my whole intro again. I think there's like a benefit to like a dry run, but it wasn't the intention. And I was like, that sounded really good what I just said. I wonder what people think about that. But there was no one there because it wasn't live. Let's see. Watch live. Big difference between listening and active. I'm just getting on Facebook and making sure that it's actually working here. Okay. I am live now. Yes, I am. Thanks for noticing, Facebook. All right. Who's here? Who's all here? Who's all here? Somebody say hi. There's there you go. Hey, Lydia. Hey, Jennifer. Jennifer, our weekly long haul trucker. Where are you, Jen, in the world today? If Jennifer, our long haul trucker, is trucking, she may not be able to type that so easily. Let me just adjust my windows a little bit. I see that people are coming in. Or as I said, I don't know how much you heard, but I started the live and started talking, and the live button didn't work. And I did the whole intro and nobody was here. And I was like, what's going on? Oh, wow. Jennifer says she's at home recovering from COVID. So I'm sorry to hear that, Jen. Super curious how you caught that. All right. So just taking one more check online before I go and do my whole intro again for the second time. Okay. I hope you're doing well, because Jen, you started that a few days ago, so hopefully you're on the upswing there. Whoever's joining in, please say a message, send a message. I see that some of you are listening from my personal Facebook account, and I can't see your text, so I'm just trying to get over to my personal Facebook account now so I can see myself live and make sure I get any of your messages, because very often people might write messages in my live stream and I don't actually see them. There we go. Hey, Andrea. Okay, so 2 different places I'm watching. All right. I'm going to pause that. And here we go. Hey, Andrea. All right. Well, I guess you can hear me. I'm like literally typing to you as if you can't hear. Like the whole point is that you're listening to me straight. All right, let's get this going. Andrea, I think it was last week that you said you're going to take the challenge. Was it? I don't remember. It must have been 2 weeks ago that you're going to take the challenge to go stare at the water. Did you end up doing that? Oh my God, I just realized I'm going to share invite. So I just realized that if anybody wants to actually join me live on screen, and today is actually going to be a great one for anybody that does want to join me live on screen, because it's about active listening. And it really does help to practice this one live. Since this is live coaching, the whole purpose of this is to be able to get on the screen and try this out. And I think that active listening is kind of one of those things where you're really going to understand it a lot better if you're sitting here with me. Here's Lydia coming into the stream now. So yeah, I'm probably going to ask if anybody's willing to come on screen today after we do the short kind of overview of what these bullet points are, and do a little practice, because it really does matter. So Today's topic is about active listening and how much of a difference it makes when we're using active listening for creating connection. Active listening is very important for use with people that when they're sharing with you, what they're looking for is actually some feedback, some validation, support, feeling some form of connection, like somebody understands where they're coming from. And that's really only possible if you're an active listener. So the major difference between a listener and an active listener, a listener is somebody that can hold space. So if I'm telling you about how at the start of this live, I was basically talking to myself because the live button didn't work. And then I got all confused. And I'm just telling you a story. You're listening, but you're not actively listening because there's nothing I can see. I can't see you. I mean, I can see Lydia, but like I can't see because she's actually on screen here. But like I don't see you nodding. I don't hear you going, oh yeah, I've done that before, or like I get it. Those are all forms of active listening. But the thing is, I don't really need you to be active listening. I'm really just sharing a story because I feel good about it. Like I get what happened, I understand, and we're all just moving along. But if I'm sharing from a place where I haven't really fully processed it yet, oh, my dog is sick and he's in the hospital and I'm really feeling kind of down about it. And I'm really, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to do. That might be a scenario where there's some form of open-ended, like processing of an emotion, a processing of a thought, an idea. And that's where active listening can come in more usefully. I just want to give a shout out to how rare it is that I actually get that rainbow on the wall. That rainbow right there is actually being caused by the sun setting right now. And it's shining through a crystal it's like a multi-crystal on my window that's there so that it will create rainbows. So how amazing is it that we're here right now at 6:45 in Toronto and the sun has just hit just the right way that appeared. And I'm pretty sure that wasn't there when I started and it's like appearing as we're talking. So I love that. Okay. So the biggest purpose, I think, for me sharing this with you today is that very often when I'm listening to clients who are sharing with me difficulties that they're having with their partner or clients and sales calls or something that they went through with a friend, very often I believe that the problem would have been avoided, or the miscommunication, the misunderstanding, the tension, these things would have been avoided with just some basic active listening skills. So that's the kind of purpose as to why we're talking about this. Today, checking comments in case anybody says anything. You're all just listening. Cool. Listen along with me. So Stephen Covey is a famous writer. He did 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And Stephen Covey says, most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. This is very important because understanding is an active listening skill where we are taking in the experience of the other person with the intention of learning and understanding. So learning is the key word here. So that's understanding is to learn. But according to him, most people listen to gather information, to formulate an idea so that they have a reply. And usually it's with the intention of some form of resolution. I think that's the biggest one. People tend to reply with the intention of creating a resolution because most people have difficulty with tension, discomfort, and a lack of resolution. So when we're listening to somebody and they're sharing from a place that it's something that they're processing, that they haven't come to the resolution with, we have a tendency of listening to gather enough information so we can go, I know. Have you tried this? I tried that. I read this article. And it's about like trying to solve the problem. But see, that's not active listening. And sometimes can really shut down the person that is talking to you. Because if they're sharing with you something that is a process that they're going through, if they haven't directly asked you for an answer or a reply and you go and give it to them, you're really listening from the perspective of trying to create closure instead of trying to support the person where they're at. So we always have to meet people where they're at. If somebody's saying they have a really terrible day and you say, "Oh, I know what that's like. Tell me more about that." That's trying to meet them where they're at instead of, "Oh, I'm really having a terrible day. Oh, I'm sorry to hear you're having a terrible day. What would perk you up? What would cheer you up?" That's not meeting them where they're at, because they may not be trying to get over it. They might be trying to share it with you to actually stay in the bad mood so they can understand it more. So the number one rule of active listening is to be curious and try to learn about the other person. What are they actually going through? I watched a movie, I can't remember the name of it. It was Nicolas Cage and can't remember her name, some blonde lady. And I have the worst memory for names and dates. So just, you're going to learn that about me. Nicolas Cage and blonde lady with really Meg Ryan. Oh, there you go. So Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan. Nicolas Cage is an angel. He comes down to earth, and Meg Ryan and him are sitting in a like a restaurant or something, or at home. I can't remember why. And he's like just totally enamored with this Meg Ryan. And Meg Ryan is telling him about all this stuff, and he's just like, "Wow, tell me more." And she's like, "Why are you so interested in me?" He's like, "You're so amazing." And she's like, "What?" And he says like something like, the line is, "What does a pear taste like?" And she says, like, "You don't know what a pear tastes like?" And he says, "I don't know what a pear tastes like to you." And that really stuck with me. And that was like 20 or 30 years ago. I don't remember now, but it was a really long time ago that I saw that. But I still remember the visual of it. And I remember the pause and how different it was to have somebody say like, "Well, sure, I know what a pear tastes like, but I don't know what a pear tastes like to you." And that's really interesting to me. Like, I actually really want to know what your experience of this situation is. And it's not even from the perspective in this example I'm giving you. Nicolas Cage doesn't care to know more about a pear, and he's looking for a variety of perspectives so he can learn more about pears. He's really asking to learn about her. And he's really just like right on, like eye contact, doesn't move, just like every sound and every movement, he's completely engaged. So that leads us to the next point. Don't make it about you. In an active listening environment where somebody is sharing about them, make it entirely about the curiosity of what is their version of it, because you already know yours. And if you don't know your version of it, just keep listening and process your own process afterwards. So keep the conversation in their perspective. So and avoid making it about yourself unless you're asked for your perspective. I think I've kind of given an example of that, but here's another example. This one's really common. So if I say, "Oh, it's really frustrating, the traffic. I really needed to get somewhere, and the traffic was just stop and go, and I just got more and more worried that I was going to get to where I was going." And if you say, "I totally get it. That just happened to me the other day, and I was in traffic, and then I couldn't get to where I was going," like, you just made the conversation about you. Even though there's a connection and you're showing empathy, if your wording starts talking really about your experience of being in traffic, it's kind of like that pear example I just gave. "Oh, I just had a pear. It was the greatest pear. It was so juicy." And then the other person's like, "Oh my God, I had a pear and it was so juicy and I love the texture. I totally get it." And it's like, yeah, yeah, there is a connection there and there is an empathizing, but we have to then follow that up with, tell me more about your repair. Like we still have to bring it back to their perspective and wanting that curiosity to learn more. This is really powerful. I think that's kind of like the biggest points, the two biggest points where most people tend to kind of break the connection is they try to gather information so they can learn about themselves instead of keeping it curious. And they tend to reply with stories about themselves instead of continuing the story from the other person's perspective. So here's some other points that are things that are important to know with active listening. And they do make a difference, but they kind of add into those initial be curious and try to keep it in the other person's perspective. So this one's really cool. So eye contact and, shockingly, eyebrow movement. I just did that kind of not on purpose, kind of on purpose. Eye contact and, shockingly, eyebrow movement versus eye contact and, shockingly, eyebrow movement, right? So like eyebrows really make a massive difference in communication. It is quite shocking. And it is something that you can use. First of all, eye contact. So, this is evolutionary. If I am talking to you, this is you looking at me, I'm looking at your eyes. And I go, and I'm talking to you and I'm telling you about your day. And I just go like, yeah, and it was really amazing what was going on. If I go like this and look behind you, the evolutionary reptilian brain kicks in, and chances are you're going to be like, what just happened? Like, what are you looking at? And that's from a safety perspective to see if something's coming up to attack you from behind you. So when you're looking at somebody else, every time you look away, especially over their shoulder, if you look over the person's shoulder, that's actually going to create discomfort in them from an evolutionary perspective. It's kind of difficult to get over that. The other thing is if they're talking to you and you pick up your phone like this and hold like you're like holding eye contact and you're like, do that even for a moment, that signifies to the person that they're no longer 100% important to you. They are now maybe like 98% important to you because you just kind of went like that. So if you're active listening and your eye movement kind of has to happen, it's okay to make a note about that. Oh, that's really important. Wow. Oh, you don't say. Oh my gosh. I have to check. Okay, I just had to check the time. Yeah, go on. And sometimes it's okay as long as you're like, I pause for a moment. I have to know what time it is. Okay, because I got something coming up and I don't want to miss out on what you're telling me. So you're still keeping it about them. Yeah, and anything where you're checking the time. So the other thing is, like that was eye contact, eyebrow movement. If I'm not moving my eyes, if I'm totally engaged, and I'm not using any form of auditory cues like ooh, if I'm not making sounds, ooh, oh wow, if I can just and just the eyebrow movement is enough to make a person feel like you are engaged from a perspective of receiving what they're telling you. Okay. So here's another one called mirroring. So if a person is talking to you and they're like, what happened? I don't know. This is crazy. And you're like, wow, you don't say it. Woo, okay, woo. Even if you're using the eyebrows, even if you're like looking at them, whoa, yeah. When you're reflecting what they're going through, it helps to actually mirror some of the movements to some degree. Well, that sounds shocking. Like, wow, it sounds like it was a really big deal. So even if they're talking and their head starts to tilt to one side and you're just kind of, your head is straight and you're listening to them while they're tilting their head, if you are nodding along and you just slightly tilt your head to match theirs, there's an extra level of contact and connection that you're making through mirroring. Okay. So if their eyebrows are moving a lot, don't exaggerate it, but just try and make a little bit more like while you're listening, just If they're shocked, just be like, oh, wow, just add that in. If they are really like, oh, talking quietly, oh, I don't know. Sorry, my microphone's here. I just thought I'd get closer to it. Oh, so I was at work and, Justin came up and he was like, oh, you got to hear about this. And if you mirror that with like, oh, tell me all about it. I really want to know. I'm sorry, I had to look up the mic while I was doing that. And it's like trying to match as many of the auditory, visual, and kinesthetic cues, body movements, the sound, and the movement, the visuals of what you see. It's going to create the most amount of connection and make the person feel like you are really understanding where they're coming from. So it's not quite the same as empathizing. Empathizing is being able to take on the emotion that they're expressing. But if you can't, because it's just so horrific what they just said, that you're just like, they're like, this was horrible, and you're just in shock from what they just told you, you might be in a different reaction than what they just said. And it's okay to catch yourself, be like, oh, that's horrible, and try and match that movement afterwards. Because that's authentic. That's like, I'm shocked and I really want to start asking a bunch of questions, but I need to jump into matching you where you are. Oh, that sounds horrible. Oh, I feel so bad. How are you doing? So we're really trying to not only mirror, but we're reflecting what we hear. Okay? Not what your interpretation is. This is a really common one. So we just found out that we're pregnant. They're not like, we just found out that we're pregnant, or like, oh yeah, we just found out that we're pregnant. We just found out that we're pregnant. Like, if they're not giving any kind of cues and they're just like, yeah, so we just found out that we're pregnant. And I'm like, do I say congratulations? Are you upset about that? Is that stressful? We don't want to say, oh, that sounds wonderful. I don't know. Is it wonderful? I don't even know. Amazing. I love babies. I don't know where they're coming from. So I think it's a very common tactic to be like, that sounds great, or I love the idea of that. That's still a personal interpretation. So the best thing to say is, how do you feel about that? And really just reflect the information. Oh, you're pregnant. How do you feel about that? So that would be reflecting what you hear. Oh, so we're pregnant. Oh, you're pregnant. How's that going? What's that process like for you? So it's purely a reflection of the exact words that you hear, and then an open-ended question. I'm going to jump to my ask open-ended question bullet, which is not in this order because I like it now. So asking an open-ended question is like, what do you think about that? How's it going for you? What's your perspective? What's that like for whatever? And instead of, do you think that's going to go well? Are they going to be okay with that? Like, are they going to be okay with that as an open-ended question? But like, do you think they're going to be upset about that? That's a leading question and not as open-ended of a question. So when you are asking questions to continue the conversation, oh, we're going to have a baby. Are your parents upset about that? That's a closed question. Are you happy about that? That's a closed question. What we want to say is, what is that experience like for you? And I love babies. How is that for you? Kind of like, it's okay to give a little bit of a share, but it really has you're trying to keep it in their perspective. And even that is a bit of a touchy subject when you just immediately, so we went to my in-laws. I love my in-laws. How did it go? Well, we hate our in-laws. So thanks for listening. Like, we don't, almost can cause problems if you do share your perspective unless it's matching theirs. So from an active listening perspective, keep the question open. If you can't really tell where they're coming from because there's no mirroring for you to mirror, there's not enough signals for you to mirror, ask an open-ended question, wait for the reply, and then mirror in on that. Oh, we're having a baby. We just found out we're pregnant. How's that going for you? Like, how do you feel about that? Oh, we're a little bit concerned. I understand. Yeah, there's so many things, that can be stressful about having a baby. What are some of your concerns? Like, tell me more about that. And you're really just asking from a place of getting them to continue talking, to continue sharing. And what's most important is don't judge. Do not make a comment about whether that is good or bad, as best as possible. And try not to offer suggestions unless you're being asked for it. Okay? That's a really key point. I did not type. So I'm literally going to do that right now. Oops, almost hit the end broadcast instead of edit bullet button. Okay? Don't judge. And I already forgot what my other point was. And don't suggest. That's asked. Boop, boop, show. So again, judging is any form of saying that it's good or bad. I like it. I don't like it. Lots of people like that. Oh, that tends to go poorly for people. Unless you're being asked, don't judge. Ask them what their judgment is. How do you feel about that? Do you have a lot of people said that they're happy with that? Like, what are people saying about that? What have you read about that? What have you looked up? And then once they give you a scale, move into that scale where they're at. If they're saying it's a bad news for them, meet them where I can't say this enough. Meet them where they're at. Go into, I want to hear more. I want to understand more about how that's stressful or bad news for you. Because my interpretation might be that's the best news ever. And theirs might be that it's the worst news ever. And if you're holding space for them and active listening, find out where they're coming from. And don't make a suggestion unless they're like, it's really stressful. We don't know what to do, but we don't even know where to start. And they don't ask. It's okay to ask if they want a suggestion. Just don't immediately make it. You know what? I know lots of people have kids. I had kids, and I know that it's really confusing at the start, and it's hard to know where to go. So I'm just validating. I'm just repeating what I heard them say, and I'm saying that makes sense. Boop. Validate. Say that makes sense. I can understand where you're coming from and try and reflect that. And if you can't, if you really don't know why they're upset or why they're happy or why they're confused, just say, keep talking. Tell me more about that. Like, what else can you tell me about that? What kind of information or who have you talked to about this? What do you think your next step is? What are some other thoughts that you have about that? And if the conversation on their end comes to a point where it's just, I don't know. You ask them open-ended question. I really don't know. They're just like, I'm stuck. I just don't know. Then you can say, can I make a suggestion? Would you like a suggestion? Even better, because can I make a suggestion is still making it about you, trying to solve problems. Are you open to suggestions? Would you like suggestions? Would you like guidance? Do you want to hear what I went through about it or my opinion? Because you don't really know why they're asking. They may not even want to solve the problem. They may not even want to talk about it. They might just go, I'm really stuck. I don't know what to do. And the best thing to say is like, what more do you want? Like, what's your process? Where are you headed towards? Is this something that you want to talk about right now? Or how can I support you with that? And let them tell you if they actually want to talk more about it, or if they just like, I don't know, I'm stuck. You know what? I'm frustrated. I don't even want to talk about it. Do you want to talk about something else instead? What's making you not want to talk about right now? How are you feeling about that? Is that confusing? Like, and just give suggestions in the open-ended question. And by keeping it a question, it keeps the ball in their court to keep sharing. And if a person is just straight up just silent, this tends to happen if you're like giving, not you're doing this very often, but if you're like psychotherapy with a teenager, in my experience, most of the time they're just silent and they just aren't talking. And all the open-ended questions in the world just makes them that's what I tend to get from them. So in that case, I tend to move away from the whole active because there's not much to actively listen, and I just start telling stories. And at that point, I'm just telling stories that somehow relate to what they're going through, and then I ask an open question and try and put the ball back in their court. Have you experienced something like that? What do you think about that? And if they don't want to talk about themselves, here's another way to keep active listening. Ask them if they have experience. Ask the person, doesn't have to be teenagers, but ask them if they know of a story that's similar to what they're going through. Have you seen something like this in a TV show? Have you heard of somebody else that's gone through this? What have you heard other people say about the same topic? Just if a person that you're trying to have an active conversation with is closed and all of these techniques aren't really opening them, there might be a discomfort to open to you. There might be a discomfort to even open at all because they don't even know what they feel about it yet. Just add a third perspective. Just make it about neither of you and send the conversation to questions about other people. And that makes it a lot safer to be more open about an opinion about somebody who maybe doesn't even exist. It could just be a TV show character. I feel like I have gone through everything. So I'm just like, because I slid my bullets around while I was talking and to keep it in the flow. And so again, really just keeping the validation instead of suggesting, even if you're really trying to suggest, just try to keep it like, that makes sense. I really understand where you're coming from. And I'd love to hear more about that. So any questions? I'd love to open up the floor. I didn't want to, we got 15 minutes. We have 15 minutes left, and I'd love to hold space for anybody because that's very meta for me to hold space and actively listen during a week where we are talking about actively listening. So any questions or anything to share, or even, I'm doing it right now because this is as closed as it gets because there ain't anybody in front of me. I'm looking at a camera lens. Can you relate to this? Have you tried active listening with people, and what was your experience like? What are some tricks that you use when you're trying to listen to somebody and create a connection and they're just not opening up? Like, what are some things you say to them? So here you go. There's a bunch of examples of open-ended questions that I'd love for you to answer. And okay, I don't have a way of sharing that, so I'm gonna. What can I do about this? Okay, because I actually want to put this on the screen. So Lydia says, "Oop." Bear with me. I'm just getting this in a format that I can show. It'll be there in a second. So Lydia says, lots of wonderful ideas. I think about this quite a bit, as it often seems people who try to help don't always understand our needs. I want to, thanks a lot for that, Lydia. And you're looking great today, Lydia. I love that photo. When you are, think about the opposite of this. Let's say you're having a conversation with somebody and they're open Jennifer is literally saying exactly what so let's say you're listening to somebody and they're sharing and they actually start to close down, just like Jennifer, if they feel like you're not listening. And watch for the clues that they're getting quieter and quieter, or less and less. they're not moving their body, they're not moving their hands, they're not raising their eyebrows or making their tone starts to become gray and like monotone, and they're like, whatever, why am I even telling you? And notice if you are genuinely coming from a place of being curious about what they're going through. Notice if you're actually asking to learn more about their perspective, or notice if you're have the energy and the tone of like just trying to gather information. So that kind of might sound like Jennifer's at home with COVID, and let's just say she doesn't have it. Let's say she's getting over COVID. She's at home with the symptoms of COVID now, and just to be positive, not to deny what you're going through, but just to try and put some positivity in your space, Jen. If it's like, oh, do you got a sore throat? That's a closed question. How's your chest? That's a kind of open, but not really, and are you having trouble sleeping? And it kind of sounds like I'm really just trying to gather information, as if I'm building up to just give us that, I went through that exact same thing. That kind of sounds like I'm leading towards trying to share something from my own perspective, or share, oh, you know what? Yeah, what you really need to do is have a salt bath. It's like, is that why you're asking me these questions? Just so you can give me an answer? I didn't ask for the answer. I'm doing pretty good. How about you tell me that it sucks to be at home in bed, and that you want to know how it feels for me? Like, I mean, there's a point where if somebody starts to shut down, watch how you're talking to them and see if it changes. Here's a cool tip, which I use all the time. When I'm listening to somebody and they're talking for 5 minutes, and then I'm like repeating what I heard. Oh, it sounds like, that person treated you unfairly. And it sounds like, I totally hear you. It makes sense that you weren't happy about it. And I'm just trying to repeat the words, so they know I was listening to every word. And if I fall into the trap where I'm like, I know what that feels like, I had the same thing happen with a friend of mine, and, I totally understand. And then the person actually says, yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. So, I think maybe I should probably go get a drink. And I'm like, whoa, that was sudden. What did I do? Right. And this is a trick. If the person that you're having conversation with is just straight up like trying to get away, very often I'll ask a question about their opinion about something. What do you think about that thing you just said? Have you found other people that agree with you about like how that person upset you? And as soon as you ask a person to talk about themselves, most of the time they start the conversation back up again. They don't even leave. So I've had people that are like, I can't stay on the phone, I gotta go. And as soon as I ask them a question about themselves, they'll talk for another 5 minutes. If it's really engaging and something they're really excited about, and they're like, what happened? No, I can't stay on the phone. I got to go. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, you know what? Thanks a lot for that. I'm really excited to hear more about that. And just try and let them go. But it's really important to keep the conversation in the other person's perspective of sharing, to keep them going. That said, having learned more about active listening as the active listener, what if, while you're sharing with somebody else and they just keep making it about them, what if you just ask them if they want to hear more about what that meant to you? There is a way of being what we would call generous, okay, with conversation. If you're a very generous conversationalist, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, Jen. If somebody isn't listening to you, it really can feel like they're just not connecting. What's the point, right? I'm basically not doing the active listening right now, Jen, because text on the screen, but I'm just putting this out there that normally if Jen was on the screen with me, I would use these tips to keep her talking. So somebody says, I always get really sensitive and feel guilty for talking about myself too much when people pull away. But I want you to know that it is the average reaction to pull away if you are talking about yourself, if they didn't ask. So it's about knowing the right time and place and who's a good friend or who's a good space holder. Okay. Talking about my interests gets so addictive for all of us. That makes total sense. I try to bring it back to them and often do. It's like there is this kid in me trying to prove myself interesting to others, making me talk too much. And honestly, and I'm not saying who posted this comment, but I just want to share that this comes in all of us from when we're growing up. Attention, any form of attention, means that we're important. And if somebody's paying attention to us, listening to our story, hey, look what I drew today. Oh, this is what I did in school today. Oh, this is what I saw on television. If we're just like blah, 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 blahing, because we do as kids, and somebody's just like, tell me more. And they're just reacting. That makes us feel like we're getting attention, which makes us feel valuable, which raises our self-esteem. If we didn't get that enough as a kid, we're going to do that as an adult. Just putting that out there. Okay. So really see if that relates to what's happened to you when you were growing up. George is in again this week saying, what just happened? Everything just froze. Come on back. Hey, Georgia. Glad to have you for the last minute or two, because we're actually just packing up. Georgia. But always great to have your energy here. And I hope that you do watch the replay. Nobody's in. What should I do? Any questions? I'm just going to open this up because I'm like, I'd love to put somebody on screen and practice this kind of stuff. But is there anybody that feels like they would need more? Anybody feel like they could want to share a story about this, or do you have a question that I can help to explain it more? Georgia has all of the questions because she hasn't heard any of it yet. But otherwise, we're coming to the end. I'm just checking online to see see if there's anybody that's messaging online. For some reason, I'm not seeing anything else from Andrea. Okay. And all right. There's Yasmin. Hey, Yasmin. We good? Anybody have any questions? Well, anything to share? Well, everybody feeling good? All right. I feel weird. I feel like I want to say, we're done. Have a great week. But I kind of feel like there's this energy of somebody wanting to share something, or maybe they're thinking about it. But let's meditate. So somebody writes, I used to feel ignored when people didn't pay attention to me. And when you were feeling ignored, when they weren't paying attention to you, what did that make you feel about yourself? And I'm glad to hear that you have healed from it. But if you think back to how it wasn't at the moment, when people were ignoring you and didn't pay attention to you, see, I'm just like using your words. How did that make you feel about yourself? I used to misinterpret it and think I was being snubbed almost. Okay. And let's say you were. What if they were snubbing you? What if they were, what if they really didn't feel like you were very important? And so what if they were ignoring you? How did that make you feel about yourself? I mean, as you think back to it now as an adult, can you put words to it? Like, did that make you feel unimportant, small? Did that make you feel like you were doing something wrong in some way? Felt like an outsider. So did that make you feel like you're different? Felt like an outsider felt different? Yeah. So, and that, yeah. And if you felt like an outsider and you felt different, then did that make you avoid and socially unacceptable? And did that eventually lead to you having social anxiety, like just having difficulty going into social situations where you were going to share and talk and listen? Their monitor is shaking, and so I know they're typing on their what seems to be a laptop because they're like, "Doo, doo, 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 doo." I'm just waiting for the answer. Yes, I would also get upset with people who probably didn't think about it much. So I think that, this leads towards a processing of like, what did that mean about me? Was it really them? So it's kind of like, can we actively separate out that it was about us versus them really just making it about themselves? So there's a sense where if we're being ignored by somebody and we really wish that we were being validated, we wish that they were mirroring us and paying attention to us and reflecting what they heard. If they're not doing any of that, we have a tendency of taking it personally and making it about ourselves. Okay. Because us sharing really was about ourselves. So in our minds, we keep their reaction about ourselves. But one way out of that is to remember that active listening is active. Like they have to intentionally know that and make an effort to do it for you. And most people are actually just staying in a form of self-reflection. So if you're sharing something with them and you would like for them to reflect back to you, most people are actually listening from a place of gathering information. So if you're saying you had a bad day, if you see that, if you're saying that you felt a certain way, the people that we're talking to, they have a tendency of going, "Would I feel that way? How do I feel about that situation? What can I learn from what?" That's how people are most of the time, because we generally are uh, in our own process when we're not with people, and most of the time we're not talking to people from a sharing perspective. So people do have difficulty switching into active listening role and remembering that they're space holding. So just remember that without education like this, without awareness after having this education, without practice, most of the time when you're sharing with somebody, they're gathering and reflecting within themselves and not actually trying to actively listen to you. So once you're educated about what active listening is and how much effort, like this is a long list of things to really pay attention to while you're doing it, you start to realize that, like a lot of people just aren't very good at it, and it's not about you and it's not your fault. It doesn't mean you're unimportant. It means most of the time it means they just don't know how to actually hold space for you. So I hope that helps you to know that. And I hope that helps everybody to hear that, that just reminds us that, most people really aren't educated like this on how to communicate well. And so this is why I'm putting this out here, is that I'm hoping that it makes a better world, that we can all start to show, how we want to be treated by doing this for others. And it also helps us to recognize when somebody's not doing it for us, it's not our fault. Like don't take it personally. And take that effort upon yourself to find somebody that you can say, "Are you okay with holding space for me? Can you validate or hear where I'm coming from?" It's okay to take that initial step and be like, "Where are you coming from before I share this? What are you thinking about what I'm sharing? Like, and then if they go off about themselves, then just let go of the idea that you're going to get space holding from them and just go find someone else." Like that's self-preservation. And that also keeps your self-esteem high, by the way, that you're like, "Okay, they can't do this. No problem. It's not me. I'm going to go find somebody else who can do it." And it's about their ability, not your deserving of it, because you always deserved it. We all deserve to be heard and reflected, but we can't always find somebody that can do it well. So if they're not doing it for you, it's not personal. It's about education. I can relate to that. Yes, social anxiety and introvert, says Jennifer. So I think we're going to officially call it done at this point, because that was a really good share, and that was what I was hoping for. So thank you, everyone, for sharing and giving some perspectives and giving us because your share with me allows me to extend out what I'm explaining into more direct experience, more like directly what you're going through, as opposed to giving generic information. And it also kind of reminds me of the depth of what this is, and the different ways that you can experience it. So by you sharing what your perspective is and what you're going through, it helps me to give more information that is more directly related to your perspective. So that was a good one. I just checking in if there's anybody else that wants to share anything. Otherwise, 7:30, and we're going to call it done for today. And it just whipped by. Like it's amazing how this time flew by today. But just seeing everybody, lots of people here. Just thanks again. Thank you very much. Thanks for thanking me, and another wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for your attention, for actively listening to me. It really does feel good. It feels good that you're showing up, and it feels good that this is making a difference. And I only know that it does because you're actually being open to share that with me. So I appreciate it very much. And you're helping me to be a better person as well by reflecting on all of these things that I've learned, and that keeps me in tune, right? It keeps me practicing this in real time so that I can share it with you from a perspective of walking the walk, walking the talk, talking the talk, and walking the walk. I guess I'm doing both of those. All right, Jennifer, we all wish you felt better, and we are very grateful that you still tuned in, even from a place of not feeling well and needing to recuperate. I hope this took your mind off of it, at least for the last almost hour. And I hope that it helped you to have something to think about even after this. And watch lots of comedies, get some videos on while you're trying to feel better, and keep yourself positive. I went through this too. I know what it's like. And there's a lot of patience involved, and in getting better. And just know that you're going to get better. And I hope that you do. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll call her done. All right. Have a great week, and we'll see you all again next week.